Hi, everyone. I was asked by the graduate school at UQ to give a masterclass to the RHD students. And so I put a fair bit of time and effort into prepping for it. And so I thought I'd record a general presentation here as well for everybody, which kind of is a snapshot about where things are currently in the AI space. So I thought it might be of interest. So I'm going to talk roughly about large language models. I'll talk about the fact that AI seems to be everywhere and it's popping up in more and more places. I'll give you some prompts, some tips on how to summarize articles and some various tools to be able to help with that, as well as literature searches, experimental materials. We'll talk a bit about text to image, image to text, text to video and voice, academic AI, which is a resource I made available last time, and just some tips on how to keep up. So let's start with some large language models. Most people are aware of ChatGPT, which is the most popular large language model, but there are quite a few, and they're growing. So they've been around for quite some time, but the number of parameters, the sophistication of these things seems to be getting exponentially larger. Well, not necessarily the sophistication. It's a lot of it's based on the same sort of architecture. It's at its root, it's just matrix multiplication, but these things are getting bigger and bigger. And that was a previous paper up until 2021, and this trajectory seems to be continuing. This only goes to 2022. I couldn't find anything more recent. And some larger models are coming out very soon. Google's DeepMind's Gemini is coming out imminently. Some people are saying in the next month or two. GPT-5 is currently being trained on. Inflection is also another big one that's coming out. There's a ton of resources going into these models, and they just seem to be getting quite a bit bigger in terms of the number of parameters and the amount of compute that's being dedicated to training these things is incredible. As I said, it's been growing exponentially. And I think the best way to kind of appreciate it is to look at where we've been with respect to the image to text, text to image sorts of models as well. So here we have DALL-E, DALL-E 1. And so you can see some of the prompts along the bottom, like a group of elephants walking in muddy water. And you can see 1 year later how much these image models have improved. And these go for the text-based models as well, but it's hard to appreciate the sophistication of the sort of responses that you're getting out of the large language models. But it's easy to see with these image models. And so here's a simple prompt in DALL-E 1, a hedgehog using a calculator. It's still impressive that it's capable of even doing that at all. It has the concept of a hedgehog and the concept of a calculator, and it kind of mashes them together. And DALL-E 2, so just one iteration in that model from there to there, you can see how much it improved. But many of you have heard that DALL-E 3 was recently announced just a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. Now, and so we can see, and I was quite surprised. So this is great, right? You have a hedgehog, and you have a calculator. I was wondering how much this would be improved upon, and so I typed it into DALL-E 3, and here we go. It could be improved upon. If you look closely, you see that the keys aren't great. It still struggles with text. And getting the text down. You can see the numbers on the little spreadsheet and on the computer screen aren't quite right. They're definitely numbers, sort of. It's not quite there, but it's quite a bit better from DALL-E 2 to DALL-E 3. We see another level of improvement. When I gave the masterclass on the 15th of June this year, I asked DALL-E to produce a raw photo of a chef in a bustling Italian kitchen, playfully tossing dough in the air during an evening rush, taken with a smartphone camera using a wide-angle lens. And these are the images it came up with. Some are a bit scary. The woman on the left, I'm not sure, doesn't even know if she has a face. But I asked it again just recently, 25th of October, and you can see how much it's actually improved. The top left one, you can see someone's actually taking an image on a smartphone as well, so it has both of those concepts. And you can see that wide angle lens happening as well. Really quite impressive. Again, room for improvement, but not bad. These things are growing exponentially. This is a report in Nature. You can just see the amount of papers that are being published on AI is growing exponentially. People have said compute is the new oil. NVIDIA, this is an incredible company in terms of the creators of the chips that drive these large language models and AI, the generative models that we're seeing, and it's doing quite impressively in the market as well. Stanford University, the human-centered AI, have been looking at the private investment in AI. It seems to be growing at a crazy rate. The number of AI job postings in the US is growing. The State of AI report was just released on the 12th of October, and they kind of echo a lot of these sort of sentiments as well about the amount of compute, the amount of money being invested, of talent going into these disciplines has just been incredible and seems to be growing exponentially as well. So you could just imagine what the sort of effects of that are going to be over the next year or even the next few months. As I said, most people are aware of ChatGPT, but that's just one of many, many, many models. This is a visualization put together by by Alan Thompson, and the ones with the black outline on each of the circles are closed models. The ones that are without are open models. You can see there's a ton, and he actually mentioned that there were, on average, like a large language model coming out every second day. So this is just a snapshot. There are a lot of these models. The size of the circle is the number of parameters, the size of the models. And yeah, there's just a ton that are out there. You can see GPT-3 there on the left, GPT-4. The size of it was undisclosed, but there's some speculation about the estimates about how large it actually is. It's roughly, I think they call it a mixture of experts model. So it's essentially like 8 GPT-3s kind of put together into a large sort of combinatorial model, which is quite cool. But you can see some of the other models and some that haven't come out yet, like Google DeepMind's Gemini, which I mentioned, Anthropic Claude, Claude Next, or Claude 3, I suppose, is on the horizon as well. OpenAI's GPT-5, Mustafa Suleyman, who's the CEO and co-founder of Inflection, has talked openly about their model, Pi, for personal intelligence, which is currently training. It should be out, I think he said, in January. And these things are massive. Like, we're talking orders of magnitude larger than the current models that are out there. So 10 times the size, even 100 times the size of the current models. And so we're talking a lot about the sort of sophistication that we can see currently in these large language models, but it's going to get even more impressive very soon. This is a slide I showed last time in terms of comparing GPT-3 versus 4, and the step change is real. There was a lot of issues early on with GPT-3 in terms of hallucination, for example. I think the measures, Google's Bard, which was another model, less sophisticated, was making quite a bit of hallucinations. I think on the order of about 45%. GPT-3 was making about 22% hallucinations. ChatGPT-4, according to some of this work, was making about 2% in terms of the hallucinations. So on this particular measure, I mean, which isn't important, but it's just showing the step change in terms of how accurate and how much these models are improving over a short amount of time. And again, you can imagine that that's even going to tighten up further as these models get larger and larger. And of course, as I said, GPT-5 is just lurking over on the horizon as well. which is going to be quite impressive. ChatGPT-3 is currently free, 3.5. GPT-4 Plus currently costs $20 US a month to be able to use. But people also have access to Bing, which has GPT-4, or at least a version of GPT-4 built in to it. And that's free to everybody to use. And it has the capability to generate images as well. So you can, within Bing, ask it to create a photo of a hedgehog using a calculator, and you can get those same sort of images out. It doesn't have quite the same sort of capabilities. Even in generating images, you can only generate images of a certain type. You can't generate like wide aspect ratio images, and there are some limitations. The Plus version as well has things like the ability to browse the web, which I suppose you can do in Bing, has a much more limited context window size. The number of words that you can enter is less than half of what you can do in GPT-4. Actually, even in half of what you can do in GPT 3.5, in fact. So it's quite limited in that respect. It doesn't have the advanced data analysis and other things. But again, Microsoft Bing is available to, I think it's 169 countries. So this sort of capability is available to a lot of people for free, which is fantastic. The difference between these models is quite astounding. Again, if you're just using the 3.5 version, it really pales in comparison to the performance of 4 on many different tasks. So you can look at how it performs in calculus and English literature and the uniform bar exam. And the cool thing is, when you're looking at these tasks, I mean, 4 is doing extraordinarily well relative to 3.5, but it's doing extraordinarily well even relative to humans, right, on many of these tasks. And as you can see, many of us who are watching this are in psychology. We have these tests, these theory of mind tasks that have been devised, but not for this purpose, right, in testing the sort of metacognitive abilities of large language models. And so I think we need better tests of seeing how capable these things actually are. I mean, they're fairly primitive, and all of them are in the internet now. And so there's always a question as well about how many of these are included in the actual training sets. But regardless, you can see it's performing extraordinarily well on many of these measures. And it's just getting better and better over time. And again, you can just imagine with a step change in an order of magnitude improvement in terms of these models, what this is going to look like and what's in store for us. There was a cool paper out recently in comparing ChatGPT and GPT-4 performance on soft skill assessments in medicine. So GPT-4 versus doctor, the medical soft skills, looking at communication, interpersonal skills, professionalism, cultural competence, organizational behavior, and leadership. And GPT-4 performed perfectly compared to humans. This is what people prefer in terms of the two outputs, and people preferred the GPT-4 responses over the humans, both on those measures as well as ethical scenarios as well. It outperformed human performance. And it's really, really cool to think about how these emergent capabilities are coming online. I mean, if you're measuring accuracy, so just how good it is at these various tasks like arithmetic or unscrambling words or identifying grounded mappings or whatever the task may be, it just, if you're the parameters are on the x-axis, accuracy is on the y, and you can just see it just can't do it. It's just completely inaccurate. And then at some point, when the model gets large and sophisticated enough, these capabilities just come online suddenly, right? They just emerge seemingly out of nowhere. There is some controversy in this particular paper, which just came out in May, looking at whether this is a mirage or not. And it turns out that the particular measure of accuracy, that's where you see the sort of emergent properties. But if you change the DV in terms of similarity space, then it just seems to be a bit more gradual. But frankly, I think a measure of accuracy is the right level of analysis here, right? That's what we should be looking at in terms of its performance, which again is interesting for a couple of reasons. Because one, that these things just come online suddenly, but secondly, you can't predict which of these capabilities are going to come online at any given moment. So, I mean, you could just have these models and then suddenly it's capable of planning or capable of, metacognition at 3 or 4 levels, right? Who knows? I mean, and again, with these future models, it's very, it's completely unknown, even to the people that work on this stuff, about which of these capabilities are going to come next, which is interesting. As I said, AI is everywhere. So most people are familiar with ChatGPT. They have a phone version, which I meant to have a screenshot as well. Now you can have voice on the actual phone version, and you can have a conversation with ChatGPT. And the voices they've included are phenomenally good. In fact, if you've ever seen the movie Her, about an AI, it has the voice of Scarlett Johansson.
What's one simple thing you think every educator should know about AI?
I'd say every educator should know that AI can be a powerful tool for personalized learning. It can help tailor educational content to suit each student's needs. What do you think about the role of AI in education?
So, which is fantastic. And they've actually used, as far as I can tell, the voice of Scarlett Johansson as one of the voices in ChatGPT. So when you're having a conversation, it sounds phenomenally good. There's a slight lag between when you're talking. I mean, it's literally like having a phone conversation with it, which really kind of changes the dynamic from this sort of chat conversation that you're having to having an actual conversation with somebody like on the phone, which is a really interesting experience. If you have it try to teach you something, teach you about entropy or the Doppler effect or something, it doesn't matter. But having that sort of conversation and having these models trying to teach you about something is really something else, as opposed to just seeing text on a screen. So I encourage you to try it out. And of course, you have the back end in terms of the platform where you can give it particular instructions and have control over the various parameters like the top P or the temperature and so on. And of course, Bing, as I said, which is free. And it has 3 different modes: creative, balanced, and precise, where it's essentially controlling that level of temperature. The creative, it's just quite liberal. And if you think about it in terms of predicting the next token or predicting the next word, the creative, it's much more liberal in the next word that it's able to predict, versus precise, which is you're really kind of dialing that in. Bard, as I said, the Google Bard, one of the much less sophisticated models, and again, soon to be replaced by Gemini. Claude, which is a really interesting one. We just got access to this in Australia just a few weeks ago, which has some incredible capabilities that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But this is a really exciting development. Pi, which I mentioned, this is Mustafa Suleyman's company, Inflection, which Pi stands for personal intelligence. And these models, this one's quite specific. So you know about some of these AI models like AlphaGo and so on that are trained to be chess experts. This one is essentially trained to be a personal assistant, a personal intelligence. And it's trained on tons and tons of conversations. And that is something that it does extraordinarily well, right? So it doesn't do as well at coding, at solving mathematical problems for you, at doing all of the other stuff. It can do it, but just not as well as something like GPT-4. But it is extraordinarily good at conversations and asking you questions and eliciting sorts of responses. It's incredibly good, and it's really worth a try. It's quite polished as well. So again, it's free. Give it a go, see what you reckon. Poe is by Quora. So this is actually an aggregate of many, many models. So you can actually try out a whole bunch of different models like Claude, like Bard, Llama, Mistral. There's a bunch of them that you're able to try. It's less relevant, especially now that I used to use this because that was the only way I had access to Claude. But now I can actually access Claude for free here in Australia, so I don't have much use for Poe anymore. GitHub Copilot, so a lot of the coding tools that we use, it's baked right in. So you can ask it, for example, help me revise my code so it saves chat transcripts in a database for more permanent and queryable storage, and it will do it, right? So you can actually just have it ask about the code, and it will change that code dynamically and help you write code as you go along. It's being built into Windows, so Windows 11 will have it throughout the entire operating system. In pretty much everything that you're using, you can just have it baked right in. Apple seems to be responding as well. There are rumors that they have Apple GPT, essentially the internal language for them. They're investing roughly $1 million a day into developing this stuff. So again, that's going to be on the horizon soon. Google Docs as well. All of the major players have this built in. I haven't even mentioned Meta, Facebook. They just had a massive announcement recently where they are baking in AIs into everything. But they have these partnerships with various celebrities like Mr. Beast and Paris Hilton and Kylie Jenner and Snoop Dogg, and they have essentially created these avatars. They paid them, I think the rumor is about $5 million each. So they can have these avatars and people can chat with these avatars, which look almost exactly like them and sound like them. And they're trained on a ton of their content, which is a really interesting move. They've also released these glasses, which look almost perfectly like Ray-Bans. And they have these little cameras built in that you're able to kind of have audio. It's kind of like Google Glass, but infinitely better and almost undetectable. Anyway, a lot of developments coming out of Meta as well, as in addition to their models, which they've made open source, weirdly, unlike a lot of these others where they're being incredibly secretive. Prompting. OpenAI has some instructions specifically on prompting, and essentially the word be explicit about what it is that you want. Don't assume that it's just going to read your mind. For those of you in psychology who know about this notion of face space, it's a really kind of, that's how I think about prompting and think about how these models really work. I mean, they are just multidimensional models. So you have faces that are kind of aggregated in this face space to look that are kind of based on the similarity of the faces. So toddler faces tend to go together, Caucasian faces tend to go together, blondes tend to go together, and in the middle of this face space you have the average, right, which is just kind of the average of all of those faces of all different ages and races and ages and everything else. And yeah, they tend to cluster together on the basis of the similarity within that space, right? So that's the notion of face space, but you can think about it in terms of a map as well, right? You can just zoom out at that high level in the same way that you could imagine all of the faces that you could possibly encounter and what the average of that face would look like. In the same way, again, thinking about a map, you're just zoomed out to the entire world. Think about that with respect to a hedgehog using a calculator. All of the possible images, it might be quite vivid in your mind exactly what you want out of that prompt, but it's not to GPT. Do you want a cartoon? Do you want an anime, right? Do you want a realistic image? And it tries to guess on the basis of, it really can't guess. So it's kind of giving you, that's why it gives you 4 often. And so it kind of samples that space to give you a choice. But if you want something specific, then be specific. Right? So drill in specifically to the area within that large space that you would like. So here we are in St. Lucia, and I want you to create a realistic photo of a hedgehog sitting on a desk in a study room intently focused on performing calculations in a small calculator. The hedgehog is wearing reading glasses and tiny red bow tie. It's standing on his back legs on the top of the desk, which is made of solid oak wood. The desk has a green banker's desk lamp on the right side, and his nose is scrunched up as it carefully presses the calculator buttons with its tiny claws. And we get exactly that, right? And so, and all 4 images represent that level of specificity, and you are much more likely to get what it is that you want. Again, that's a very easy way of thinking about it in terms of images, but the same thing happens with text, right? If I want you to write an 800-word essay or a paper, an abstract, or whatever it is on AI and mental health, can machine learning predict psychological well-being? No idea. This is just a topic, actually, that GPT came up with when I was thinking about this stuff. And again, that's just write an essay. And that is zoomed out at the world level, at the broadest possible level, and is going to give you an essay that is just average, right? That represents any sort of essay. Is it written for an 8-year-old? Is it written for an 80-year-old? Is it written for an undergraduate, or is it written for a specialist? It doesn't know, and so it's giving you something somewhere in the middle, right? And that's what it looks like. It's well written, right? But it may not be what you're looking for, because it has to account for anybody who might be asking for this sort of content, right? From any sort of perspective, and it's giving you the average of all of those. If you're more specific, you could say something like, on predicting and enhancing psychological well-being, discuss how these algorithms are currently being implemented, as well as ethical considerations that come to use in mental health. Include any controversies or limitations. And then you get something quite a bit more specific, right? It's not quite there, in my opinion. If I was trying to write something, an academic sort of essay, it's not bad. Let's get very specific, right? We're drilling down into St. Lucia again. Write a well-researched essay using 800 words in the style of an article published in Psychological Science that explores the use of machine learning algorithms in predicting mental health outcomes, and so on and so on. Right? Explore both the promise and the limitations of integrating machine learning into mental health diagnostics, and treatment plans include at least 5 high-quality references formatted in APA 7. That's very specific. Let's see what we get. And again, it does a beautiful job. It gives you the title, the abstract, and references throughout the entire thing. And again, with 3.5, you would very likely get some hallucinations, which again have even come down over the last 6 months in terms of the likelihood of it to hallucinate. But with GPT-4, these references are bang on. I've checked them as well. And it does a great job. My only complaint here is that it doesn't actually include the DOIs in the reference list, but that's a small quibble. And it is now connected to a browser, GPT-4, so you can ask it to retrieve the DOIs from each of those references if you did want it to. In terms of prompting, you could ask it to do what's called a zero-shot prompt, which is what most of us do when we're actually using ChatGPT. You have a prompt like, write an email to the School of Psychology, inviting them to the next academic committee, but use quirky, humorous elements to lighten the tone and make the event seem more engaging. For those of you who know this guy, it's Mark Horswill, who sends out the best email invitations to academic committee. I've looked at my email inbox for the last several years. He's sent these out every month, and each one is just hilarious and awesome. But if I wanted to emulate Mark, or create a Mark GPT, I suppose, and to do that, you could try to approximate the email with a prompt like this, but you wouldn't get very far, right? It would give you something crappy with a bunch of emojis, pretty much. But if you used what's called few-shot prompting, you would get something quite a bit better. So I actually took 4 of Mark's prior email invitations to academic committee. You're personally invited to School of Academic Committee this Wednesday at 12. Password at the door will be "let me in." You should really know who I am by now. If you can't make it, send me a message with the following in the title: new phone, who dis? And so on, right? There's 4 of those. And then the prompt at the bottom that says, given the above examples, write an email in the exact same style to invite my colleagues to the next academic committee this Friday at 12. And I encourage you to try it out. It does a pretty good job. I was laughing out loud at the one that it actually created. A phenomenal job. So Mark, if you're watching this, maybe give it a go. See what you reckon. So how can you use this in practice? Well, we just submitted a manuscript to the journal Creepy, Cognitive Research, Principles and Implications. And I need help revising my abstract and significance statement. I've also included 3 examples of abstracts and significance statements from 3 of the most accessed articles in this journal. to assist you? Can you provide me with some feedback on what you changed and why? So here's the abstract that we wrote and the draft significance statement that we wrote. And then I gave it 3 different examples, 1, 2, and 3. Feed those in, and it produced a revised abstract and a revised significance statement that you could then use as a draft and then iterate on that. And it does a really nice job. I mean, those are those are really fantastic. And it's one of those cases where it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. The more impressive the information that you feed in, the more impressive the output that you're going to get. So the more time and effort you spend kind of crafting those prompts, the better the information you're going to get out of it. And it also gives you the feedback on the changes that it made. Here's what I did. I simplified some of the sentences. I improved the clarity. I emphasized the key findings. With the significance, I focused on the impact. I streamlined the explanation. And I included some forward-looking statements. And again, you could take it or leave it. You could even just regenerate it and do that as many times as you'd like and get more and more information. But the best way to figure this out is to just try it. But currently we're in that sort of mode where these sort of tips with the prompts really can make a difference in the quality of the stuff that you get out. It might change over time. Another interesting one is, like, these models are weird. And again, even the people who are doing it don't fully understand what makes them better in some respects, or even why they do what they do. So here's a very counterintuitive one, a very cool one. So you have large language models as optimizers. Let's look at this table. Now check this out. On the ACC, this is the accuracy of the response, right? So the zero-shot test accuracy from optimizing using different sorts of instructions. So if you include words like, let's think about this step by step, it improves the accuracy. So if you just don't say anything at all, that empty string, you're at 34%. Let's think step by step, improves it to 71.8%. Let's work this out step by step, in a step-by-step way to be sure that we have the right answer, right? Doesn't do as well. Now, what about this one? Take a deep breath and work on this problem step by step. We see an improvement up to 80.2%. So saying nothing, 34%, and then saying take a deep breath, model, and work on this problem step by step is actually the most impressive improvement in terms of the instruction. Now, how weird is that, right? And again, thinking about this in terms of the models and all of the stuff that it's been trained on, your guess is as good as mine as to why that worked. And so that's for the PaLM model, again, which isn't the most sophisticated model out there, but it seems to transfer. It seems to generalize to other models as well, large language models like GPT and others. So let's talk about how to summarize articles. Here's a paper that we wrote recently. If you wanted to find out what's in a paper, common way of doing it, how do you get the information? How do you have it summarize the information for you? That's a very common use case. Well, you could open it up in Acrobat or Apple Preview, select the entire thing, copy, and paste it into GPT. Right? I'm sure many of you have tried that, and you'll get a message that says, no, sorry, what you submitted was too long, reload and try submitting something shorter. And the problem is this paper is roughly 10,000 words, and the context window, the size of the amount of text that GPT will accept, isn't even close to 10,000. It's on the order of about 4,000 if you're using GPT-4. So what do? Well, ChatGPT 3.5 will only accept about 2,000 words. GPT-4 is about 4,000 words. Bing, which is free, will accept 800 words. So that's a problem. Specifically, Bing, those of you who are staff at UQ may have just got that email yesterday, day before, giving us access to Bing Chat Enterprise, which is essentially Bing, but it doesn't, unlike other AI tools, Bing Chat Enterprise protects personal and UQ data. It doesn't retain chat history, or it doesn't train on the underlying models, nor does it have access to UQ data, nothing. So what you put in stays in, and it isn't available to anyone else. And it's encrypted going back and forth to OpenAI. So you can make sure that what you put in there is protected. And so ITS is saying, hey, great, we'll give you access to this and you're able to use it. The problem is it's only 800 words, right? And it doesn't have nearly the level of sophistication as those other two models. And so if you wanted to use it to do something like summarize a paper for you, that isn't going to be the best tool. So what can you do? As I said, this paper is 9,500 words. Well, you could split it, right? Especially if you're going to use Bing, it would take you, a good 19, 20 of these splits to actually put it into Bing and have it and ask any questions about it. So you can select a particular model that you're going to try to split it into, and you can take it and then split it into, say, 5 parts. And then you copy, paste it, copy, paste it, copy, paste it, and then ask questions about the article after you've pasted it 5 times. Really kind of a messy solution. It's not great. Better is Claude 2. Now this is Anthropic Claude, which is what I mentioned previously. And this just came online for Australians just a very short time ago, just a few weeks. And it has a context window of 75,000 words. Now that's really impressive. 75,000 words. That is equivalent to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. So that's a fair number of words. You can feed in an entire book and ask questions about it. Now that really opens up a lot of possibilities with these large language models and what their capabilities actually are. So you can imagine the sort of thing that you could feed in, both from kind of a university perspective. You could feed in the entire strategic plan, the entire PPL, all of the kind of the rules and regulations, and then ask questions about it. Various administrative cases. You could feed in entire theses and ask questions about it. There's the number of use cases is just astonishing. And so what we can do here, the cool thing is as well, is it allows you to attach documents. So you just click that little paper clip, select the paper, say summarize it for me, and boom, there you go. It gives you a beautiful summary of the paper. Now, again, because you have such a large context window, it's quite an interesting phenomenon. So there's another paper that just came out recently where it was looking at, it's called Lost in the Middle, How Language Models Use Long Contexts. And what essentially it found is that the information that it's able to retrieve from this long passages of text, it does best with the stuff in the beginning and the stuff at the end. So we can see a primacy effect and a recency effect for those of you who know about these effects in psychology. So the same sort of things that we see in humans, it remembers the stuff in the beginning and the stuff at the end better than it does the stuff in the middle. And so if you want to have these models, if you want to ask it particular questions, you either want to ask it at the beginning and at the end of that prompt to make sure that it gets the information that you want it to. And again, it does a really nice job at writing as well. So you can use the same sort of prompt, write a well-researched essay, 800 words in the style, same prompt, and it does a really nice job of that. Some people actually prefer, even though Claude 2 is less powerful, it's not as powerful as GPT-4, they prefer the long context window and actually the way that it writes over GPT-4. So the writing from Claude 2 is actually really quite good. Again, no DOIs in the references, but again, it has access to the internet as well, so you can actually ask it to do that. So that's where we are. And again, just keep in mind that this is just a snapshot. Everything that I talked about just recently in June, when I gave the last masterclass, is almost obsolete. It was just a snapshot at that time. Here we are just a few months later, and everything's changed. We have multimodal models. They can see, they can talk. We have text to video. We have just a ton of stuff that has happened in the last few months that it's just incredibly fast moving. What about literature searches? Again, I alluded to the fact that GPT-4 has the capabilities. You can have it browse with Bing. You can use this advanced data analysis, which I'm not going to get into today, but it does. You can have it create graphs. You can have it. You just upload a CSV file, and it just starts analyzing it, or an Excel file, anything, and it just does it. You don't even have to prompt it. It just starts analyzing it. It gives you It tells you I'm going to do these analyses, I'll give you these visualizations, and then it just goes ahead and just starts doing it. You have plugins which are available, so it has access to things like OpenTable and a bunch of third-party things that it integrates theirs, and DALL-E 3, that's the image generator. And you can go back and forth with DALL-E 3, which I'll talk about in a while. But you can use the Bing, the browse with Bing, to ask it to do a literature search. So do a literature search on machine learning algorithms and predicting mental health outcomes with a particular focus on depressive disorders and anxiety. And it goes and it does that, and you see the little numbers there at the end of each paragraph that you can then click on. It will open the paper that actually makes reference to each one. And so it's not just using the information in its training set, it's actually using both the information in its training set and it's going out onto the web and having it's anchored to those as well. There's another website called Scite, SCITE.ai, which does a brilliant job. I've actually subscribed to this one. You can do the same thing, do a literature search. It gives you a literature search, but it actually makes reference to each of these papers and lists them along the right-hand side in context. And so you can just hover over every single one of those and see where in every single one of those papers the actual text snippet comes from and the information comes from. And it gives you just a ton of information. It works well with literature, things like EndNote. Yeah, it does a really, really great job. Another one, a common one, is elicit.com. So you could say, do a literature search on the use of machine learning algorithms and so on. And it gives you a nice summary of the top 4 papers right at the beginning, but it gives you this nice table at the bottom. So it has a list of all of the papers. Then it gives you like a brief 1-sentence summary of each of them, of the abstracts along the right-hand side, which really saves a lot of time in kind of scanning the literature. And all of these are up-to-date sort of references as well. Consensus.app is another one that you can use. And again, it tries to break down each of the articles in terms of the quality of the journal, whether it's an observational study and so on. It's kind of then it has that little synthesize toggle at the top. And you click that, and if you ask it a yes/no question, it'll actually give you a summary. Can machine learning algorithms be used to predict mental health outcomes? And it will look at the papers and try to come up with a summary. So 14% of them say yes, 86% say possibly, nobody says no, and then it gives you a little summary that goes along with each. So Consensus does a nice job, and I did that all for free. What about other uses? I mean, materials, it depends on the area that you're in, but you can use it. In cognition, I've used it a ton. You could use it to help refine your survey questions. You can help it with ethical considerations. I was chatting with one of my colleagues the other day where they were feeding in their entire ethics application and just seeing what sort of issues that the ethics panel might raise as a result of their application, and it did a beautiful job at anticipating things that even they didn't anticipate. You can have it explain algorithms. You can have it create fictional scenarios, whatever. Just try it out. And I can't emphasize that enough. The best way to figure out how well these things work is to actually just try them out on stuff that you do all the time. Text to image is a very cool one. So again, depending on the area that you're in, you can ask it to do a whole variety of things. Now, ChatGPT DALL-E 3 is just one of the many, many text-to-image generators that are out there. There are quite a number now. Midjourney, Adobe Firefly is an interesting one. They've been trying, Getty Images is going to have another one. They're trying to address the issues of copyright and everything else by using actual copyrighted images with the artists and the author's consent to be able to put this stuff out. And there's just a race in this space to be able to. Some are better at some things than others. One is the text. I've written that little text image thing as well as this. Text to image and image to text. Those little images that you see there, those were all done using these sort of tools as well. You could say something like create a 16 by 9 diagram of the dual process model in decision making. Because it's not so great at text, you could say don't use any text, and it does a reasonable job, has a fondness for creating brains, but it does a decent job. Image to text. You can feed in an image. This is one that we wrote as we were writing that manuscript. We say, see the following results section in the attached figure. Can you please come up with a detailed figure caption? And then I pasted in the results from the accuracy data from that experiment. And there it goes. It creates, given these results, it creates a nice caption. Comparison of the performance between experts and novices on a short-term memory task. Each dot represents an individual proportion correct score with a yellow line indicating novices and experts and so on. And it actually breaks it down. You definitely want to check it. I mean, in this case, it missed the actual error bars because I didn't tell it what the actual error bars represented. So it won't know that information. So you have to kind of make sure that it does. But it does a really nice job at explaining those. And because it doesn't know everything that you do, it does often a better job than you will at actually creating those images, because it's not kind of, it doesn't have the kind of curse of knowledge that you might. You can also feed in fairly complicated images, say methods diagrams or whatever, and just say, explain what's going on in this experiment based on this figure. And it does a really nice job. So it actually breaks down all of the aspects of our experiment here. And so we have a specific and a varied practice condition. We have a novel and a fingerprint search and a category search. Then it breaks down the tasks and what's in those tasks and so on. And the cool thing is, and even this one, right? Explain this image. It showcases the humorous comparison between GPT-3 and 4 on the left, using the depiction of the Doge meme dog, which is a Shiba, representing 3 as shown in regular unaltered form and so on. Like, the interesting thing here is when you're going from image to text, it is far superior than actually generating the image from scratch. And so you're able to feed in images that are extraordinarily complex or subtle, and it will do a great job of interpreting those. So you can have things, these aren't mine, these are others, like this one. This is a game changer. You can use ChatGPT to transform equations to Python functions. So you just paste in an image of an equation and it will create Python code that represents that equation. Or you can take a screenshot of some software and say 10 ways to improve this interface to make it more usable, right? And it does that. Or take a photograph of your room and say, how can I improve it? Well, it'll give you interior design advice on layering lighting and plants and art and storage, and introduce a mirror and what sort of effects it will have and so on. Or you take an image of food, describe the dish, estimate its calories, then give me the recipe. And it will break it down in terms of the recipe. Here's the name of the dish, break it down in ingredients. Then you could even go one step further and say, all right, create a shopping list with those ingredients for me, with the location in the grocery store that I would find them and so on. It will create those. It does a brilliant job at that sort of thing. Or something like this. It's Wednesday, 4 p.m. Can I park in this spot right now? Tell me in one line. Yes, you can park for up to 1 hour starting at 4 p.m. Again, that would take me at least a few minutes to actually work through to be able to see what the answer is. Text to video and voice. I mean, this is really quick moving as well. This is Runway ML. This is a very cool demonstration. You can ask it something like I did previously. A chef in a bustling Italian kitchen, playfully tossing dough in the air. This is not great at this point, right? So you don't see dough moving up in the air, right? The tossing isn't happening too real. It's actually like a static image, and it kind of has a moving static image, right? Here's the hedgehog on a calculator, and it just kind of takes a few seconds and it kind of creates these things. That's the state that we're in. Here's a beautiful video of people who are using this in a variety of ways. This is just one of the classic examples that is a little bit old by now, but these are, I love following Curious Refuge. It's just a great resource as well if you actually want to see kind of the state of the art of this stuff.
In the quaintest corner of Middle Earth, embark on an epic journey unlike any you've experienced before. This winter, Wes Anderson presents a heartwarming and quirky adaptation of a beloved classic, The Whimsical Fellowship. Meet Frodo Baggins, an unassuming hobbit, chosen for an extraordinary task. Guided by the enigmatic wizard Gandalf, Frodo embarks on a captivating journey with a colorful crew.
You get the idea. I encourage you to check it out. The YouTube page is great. They have one Avatar and Star Wars. They're really fantastic. But they're all done using this basic technology, just that website. And there's others like Pika and things that do something similar. Another development that just came out quite recently is this company called HeyGen. This is Josh Shu, who's the co-founder or the CEO, I think, of the company. And this is really impressive. This is one of those things where I just saw what it's capable of and just my jaw dropped. So Cleo Abrams is one of she has a YouTube channel called Huge If True, and she did a beautiful job of demonstrating what the capabilities are. So I'll just show that to you here. Here we go.
This is me speaking English, the only language that I can speak fluently. और अब ऐसा लग सकता है कि मैं हिंदी बोल रहा हूँ, एक भाषा जिसे मैं पूरी तरह से नहीं बोल सकता. Jetzt spreche ich vielleicht Deutsch. Ich spreche auch kein Deutsch. The craziest part about this is that it doesn't just sound like I'm speaking a different language. It looks like it too. Hay algo completamente salvaje y extraordinario. I made this using a new AI video translation tool, and YouTube just launched the feature called Aloud, which lets their creators dub their content automatically into other languages. An interesting difference here is that YouTube won't clone your mouth movement or change your voice. It's going to sound like a different person. Their tool has to let you edit the translation because there are things that just don't translate and it might make mistakes. But they don't know the voice that you're uploading is actually yours. So if they give that power to millions of people, then they could just upload anyone and get them to say anything in another language. But if we get this right, then being able to reach so many more people in any language, that's huge for how we all communicate. Si vous aimez les histoires optimistes de science et de technologie, suivez pour en savoir plus.
That is so cool. I mean, again, thinking about this from an educational perspective, that just opens up the capability to create our lecture content, our course content, and literally make it available to any of the countries that speak these particular languages, pretty much the entire world, depending on the limitations or the number of languages that are available using this particular platform. And that's where we are right now in 2023 with this capability. Imagine where we'll be in 1 year time, right? It just boggles the mind. Again, here we are 1 year, and you can just see how far we've come with images in moving from a single hedgehog with a calculator to these rich images. Again, let's see where we are in 1 year with respect to video. And that gets a lot of people worried, particularly in Hollywood, right? When they are protesting the use of AI, where in fact you can replace entire actors. As you've seen, you have people, some actors who have died, and they essentially resurrect them using previous footage and train AI models to act on their behalf. And oftentimes you just can't even tell. And where is that technology going to be in 1 or 2 or 3 years time? So it may be in a very impressive place where you could just have an actor, put them in front of a screen, collect some incredibly high quality footage of them, and just replace them altogether. And then how do they get paid? What does that look like? Never mind voice. We haven't even talked about voice. I mean, there's a very cool demonstration I was going to show with Johnny Cash singing Barbie Girl.
I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. Life in plastic, it's fantastic. You can brush my hair, undress me everywhere. Oh, come on Barbie, let's go party, 'cause I'm in a Barbie world. If you wanna...
Right, which he definitely didn't do. But is a phenomenal demonstration where you just have these artists that you're able to adapt their voice in and remix them in any particular way. And so people have created entire songs from scratch that these artists have never sung before. And who gets paid? How do they get paid? Because these aren't copyright issues necessarily, right? The issues are like, you're not taking their content, you're taking their style, you're taking their voice, in some sense. So it's a really murky area when it comes to copyright and how you actually legislate this stuff. So interesting times. Last time I put together this resource called Academic AI, and you're more than welcome to it. This is, again, I published it in June 15th. Many things have changed since then. I just haven't had time to update it. I had a lot of plans to go from, I talked about generating syllabi to class activities and quiz creation and research ideas, finding collaborators, code, everything. And I had a lot of plans for doing other things as well, which I've been busy. I haven't got around to doing, but I mean, I encourage you to check out some of these things, but the best way to do it is just to explore. Try to use these tools to be able to do what you do and see how well it does. That's the best way to learn. Spend at least a few hours. I'd say 10 hours. At least 10 hours playing around with this on one particular task. Try to get it to write a research report for you, or try giving it some content and seeing how well it does at providing feedback on an essay or a quiz or something. Use Claude, 75,000 words. Feed in your own PhD thesis if you're an academic and ask it to give you some feedback, or a recent paper that you wrote, and just see how well it does. I think you'll be quite impressed. Again, these are just some of the things you could potentially use it for, which might give you some ideas. But the biggest problem here is trying to keep up with all of it. These are some of the resources that I use, following on YouTube. I mean, a lot of you might not use YouTube, but it's an incredible resource. And a lot of you on Twitter or X would just, it's the last thing you would want to do is actually use that terrible platform since Elon took it over. But I'm afraid that is the chosen spot where all of these papers and a lot of this news actually appears. It's really quite good. Ethan Mullick, I should mention, he's on X, and that's where he posts all of his stuff, but he also posts it on LinkedIn. So it's worth following him on LinkedIn. And Danny Liu as well, who's at Sydney Uni. He's phenomenally good. And the content that he puts out is fantastic. So he's on Twitter and LinkedIn, and definitely worth following him. So out of all of these things, these are my top picks. AI Explained, Cleo Abram, Matt Wolfs, Andy Stapleton, Ethan Mullick, Andy Miller, Danny Liu, and the Hard Fork podcast is a nice sort of general, up-to-date kind of view on what's happening. It's through the New York Times. So check those out, see if they're of any use. And yeah, I mean, that's where we are right now as of the end of the end of October 2023, which is just a snapshot. Maybe I'll put together one of these in a few months when everything changes again, when new models, more sophisticated models come out with Gemini. Apparently OpenAI is going to announce something big on the 6th or the 9th of November or something. Who knows what that is? So stay tuned. It's exciting. And I'll talk to you soon.